Hello, my name is Chris Bennett again, and hopefully this is going to be the first video that most people see. I posted a few other videos about my projects. I tried to fit it all in. Problem, solution. And this book is the cure. This book is a path to the cure. So the problem here is the recent shooting in Uvalde. And I have no idea if I pronounced that right, but most importantly is that a lot of really nice people died. And it became a acute symptom of much larger problems. Being in that way just the tip of the iceberg. I'm frustrated, so I may be a little tense right now. I've been working on getting the solutions that are in these books to our leaders and to the public for 20 years. I'm going to get into the details. Hopefully it'll be very clear why what's in this book and this one and a bunch of other ones is the cure. And so the same ideas, which I'm going to go through, are ones that I began shopping around to the highest levels of government in 2004. 2004, I met Bar McClellan in Texas, and I started communicating with him. He wrote these two books. Made in the USA is the second one. And his ex-wife was the comptroller for Texas, Carol Keaton Strayhorn. And so I met him, and his sons worked for President Bush, and I started sharing my ideas, which 2 years earlier I had put into 11 hours of videotape, which I did with Chaplain George Russell Barber. He was the last living chaplain who landed on Normandy Beach on D-Day. Here are two of his Bibles. Oops. Here's two of his Bibles. So, 2002, a little bit before that, 2000, 2001, I did a bunch of research at UCLA, research into research, looking at all the previous research, copying, reading and copying hundreds and hundreds of studies, which I have in my library, a stack at least as tall as me, 6 feet. Then the books, a huge library here, all around me. I'm going to go through a few of them. And so these books have the same ideas in your books. But if the books remain on the shelves, and now 75% of Americans don't read for pleasure, they can read, but they don't read for pleasure. And I can tell you why. There's several critical issues which I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to get to right in the first 5 minutes, so that you can decide if this is for you or not. So, as I said, this is the cure for depression, physical illness. Most of our illnesses can easily be traced to stress. And so, let's look at this book for a minute, Capital Gains. It's about Chip's journey through high school and college and up until now of struggling with certain parts of himself, which all of us experience, and we don't always deal with it in the optimal way. So his experience from a young age was of having a drive to understand how to create the best future for himself. And so he interviewed hundreds of people, and he wrote down notes about how do you become successful, and he asked people, what drove you to become where you are? What was your passion in life that just kept you to stick with it? And almost universally, there was a non-response of people not understanding, not really seeming to be driven by their own inner needs, not really in touch with their own inner needs, more like just, this is the path I was told to go down, this is the path that everybody I know goes down, this is the path that my parents expect me to go down, this is the one I know about, and so I'm going to college for these reasons, but not doing it for their own vision, for their own, connected to their own needs. And so he struggled with that, and he found his way early on to start to tune into his own feelings. And so then he met Joanna, and in their getting married and their experiences together, she also helped and contributed to his evolution and growth to become more and more in tune with his own authentic self. And that's what's enabled him to be successful. I'm sorry I'm speaking so slowly, but I'm struggling to stay on track with this complicated subject. I promised I would mention the key problems that I'm asking everybody to look at. So this affliction, in this book he's talking about an affliction which is afflicting all of us to a certain degree, and it's called stress. So what leads to this disconnection to our own feelings is that from a young age we are being bombarded by toxic emotions from growing up in high school, television, our families have issues, brokenness, and it's all contagious emotions. This professor from UCLA, I met him 20 years ago, and this is what this is all about. So this thing in here, and that's what Chip says. He says, if you get out of touch with your feelings, then things start to go wrong, and it affects everything in your life, and it affects everybody around you. And he was noticing when he was meeting people that had that issue, especially when he became a celebrity, and people, came up to him often, and there was a unpleasant experience. And so that is people who are disconnected from who they are, and so they don't connect to who you are. And so this is all in his book, okay? And so I'm telling you, this book is important. That's what I'm getting at. These books are important. This guy who killed a bunch of people, he was in high school and he was disconnected. If he had read this book and been guided by a team that was helping him deal with the fact that he was getting D's and F's and he was getting bullied in school, dozens of witnesses he was getting bullied in school, but they don't have programs in those schools that are effective and staffed by effective people. Military people could do that. Military, hundreds of thousands of veterans. I don't care that a few of them have post-traumatic stress, or 100,000 of them have post-traumatic stress, because that's curable too. That's in this book. When you go to war, when you go to hell, and you come back, You disconnect from all your feelings. And so that's what this book is about. And so the reason why people don't want to read it is because most people have toxic stress overload. And it causes the symptoms of difficulty concentrating and difficulty with memory. That was published in my dad's book in 1984, which I got into in the other videos. And How to Control Your High Blood Pressure Without Drugs. It was endorsed by more top experts on health than any health book I've ever seen. Experts at Harvard and Stanford and UCLA and Albert Einstein University and University of Rochester and University of Maryland. So I go through that in the other videos in more detail, but I'm trying to go through it faster, and I moved to faster gear. I hope it's not too fast. I can talk slower. But this problem is serious, okay? In addition to the 19 young students who got killed with bullets, some of them suffered and then went to the hospital and died, okay? In addition to that, millions of kids are getting bullied right now. So as I said, in 2004, I shot my proposal right up to the highest level under Bush. Scott McClellan was President Bush's press secretary. Bar McClellan said, "Oh yeah, I'll get it to him. Yeah, I'll tell him about your dad's book. I'll get him a copy of your dad's book." And I wrote a really nice letter. It went to him by email about shifting the entire country into healthy living, by shifting the spending into healthy living solutions like the Pritikin Longevity Center my dad was the founding medical director of in a Trump-owned hotel on Miami Beach. The longest profitable healthy living program in the world. So this book needs to be part of that program. A bunch of celebrities did it. Congressman Henry Waxman did it. A bunch of congresspeople did it, but I don't know the whole list yet. And but they're rich, so they can afford it. But they never made the decision to get it covered by Medicare so that the rest of our family members can get it, or by health care in general. So my dad and my aunt are hovering on the edge of death now with conditions that are entirely reversible if they would get a program like the Pritikin program, if they could go into a facility right now. And so that's what this is about. It's saving my dad and my aunt because they're still savable. They're still alive. And if you have somebody you care about that's still alive and they're in bad shape, we can help them too with the changes I detail in all my videos. I was writing up a 6-page introductory letter to get this over to Chuck Norris, Chip and Joanna Gaines, Jared Padalecki, Kickstart Kids, and a bunch of the leaders in Uvalde and people that were affected by this, and church leaders in that area who had funerals. I'm going to go deliver my letters and this video, a link to this video on my website. The website is themission.tv. My other website is earthcommunicationsoffice.org. I'm also taking this to John Paul Dejoria. He's a good friend of my partner in everything that I'm doing here. My partner is Sherry Reed. She's been in the hospital recently with pneumonia. And I hope the problem is our family members that are going through the medical system are getting terrible care. I liken to the Titanic. If you don't know that, thank God. Okay? That means somebody didn't go into the medical system and then die that you cared about. Okay? If they did, don't let yourself just forget about it because other family members are going through the same medical system. And so this is about reforming the medical system right now. Let me tell you the 2-day approach, the 2-day cure. The 2-day cure is to have a TV show about everything we're talking about. This book, since most people don't read, since they have toxic stress overload, which, by the way, symptoms of difficulty concentrating and with memory was in a book in the 1950s by Hans Selye. He's the most famous stress researcher. And so he said depression is a symptom of stress. Hypertension is a symptom of stress. Difficulty concentrating, difficulty with memory is a symptom of stress. Racing thoughts is a symptom of stress. So if your thoughts are racing all the time, you can't sit and read, because that takes focus and absorption. And so this book needs to be created in a TV talk show with people who are entertaining, because I'm not entertaining, I'm annoying, okay? I'm pissed, all right? I don't know, maybe I'll evolve in the near future, okay? But anyway, let me get into a little more details of why this is a cure. I did 11 hours in 2002, going into detail that we got an epidemic of contagious stress, because stress is contagious. I talk about that in other videos. I got a bunch of books on that. And it's leading to these problems. So when the kids are getting bullied, then they're just sitting around depressed. They're getting bullied at home sometimes. They're getting bullied at school. The bullies are probably getting bullied at home themselves, because these attitudes of callousness are something we inherit by the people we spend the most time with, but not always. You can have really nice parents and you can have other issues, like you have really nice parents, but you're going to school and you're failing there and you're getting D's and F's for like 10 years, like the shooter did, and your parents don't know what to do and you go down the wrong path. And then you start taking drugs or something like that, and to cope, or drinking alcohol. You're a little kid. And because there are no positive influences except for at home, and you spend all your time at school where you're just like packed in like sardines and the teacher doesn't have any time for you. Okay, let me just, a couple of years after the 2004 with Bush's guys, okay, right here, I put together this poster right here. And here's Chuck Norris right here. Okay, so this poster, I'm not going to hold it up because it's freaking heavy, but that picture, if you could freeze frame and go back and zoom in, you can find it on my website, newplanettechnologies.com. That's technologies plural. And so that is highly relevant. I put that together in around 2005. Highly relevant to this shooting. And so I'm hoping to get some of the people that were affected by this. Okay, I'm going to hand my documents. I'm going to take it to Matthew McConaughey's house, because it's just an hour from here. I'm in Austin. I'm going to take it to Chuck Norris's ranch. It's 3 hours from here. And I'm going to make sure they get it, because emails get lost, mail gets interrupted. I'm going to try to deliver to them. Okay? I come in peace. Okay? These books are as good as burned if you don't, gently ram it down people's throat. Okay? Across the planet by putting it in primetime TV. And so it takes just 2 days. I know I'm meandering, but it all comes together in the end. Okay, it's the 2-day cure. Are you guys available on Friday? Today's Wednesday. Just let's all do a Zoom call and we'll start talking about this stuff. Okay, I hope I can do it because I'm under a lot of stress, but I'm willing to try. My dad is in really bad shape. We have weeks to save him and get him the care he needs. He's getting the care on the Titanic. I just spent hours today on the phone with my brother who's taking care of my dad. The doctors from UC Riverside poisoned him. The Loma Linda University doctor has been refusing to prescribe physical therapy for 2 years. They poisoned him so that he's crippled in bed for 2 years. He's in bad shape. Okay, this is one of the critical junctures, okay? This is where you always lose people. If you're trying to cure the world, like Chip is, okay? Or if you're trying to put forward a critical solution to all of this suffering, okay? Matt McConaughey did a great, effective presentation on this in this video, but it's going to get ignored by the majority of Americans because they have toxic stress overload. And so when you're overloading with stress, half of American adults have hypertension right now. 95% of Americans are going to get it. So, that's the symptom of toxic stress overload. And so this will get swept under the rug, and the next one will come up, and the real solutions will never get discussed. So Matthew McConaughey, my neighbor, is saying in this video, this is an opportunity to not let this pass. And so this is one of the girls that got shot. And in this picture, you can see she drew this picture of herself and of a friend of hers who passed away. And so this little girl that got shot a few months ago previously had painted this picture of herself drawing a picture of her friend, and her friend is in heaven. I'm not sure I get the story right. Her friend is in heaven looking down at her drawing the picture. And so she understood heaven. So now this girl's in heaven that got shot, looking down at us. I think this is a point that we need to consider, those of us who think about those things. Now they're looking down at us. What do they want us to do? They want us to create a TV show about the cure. And so the cure is to acknowledge the problem and understand it. And so by reading this book, you can do that. But if you can't read, then we need to talk about that in a TV show and create programming. Well, it's a long story, but this right here is a roadmap. So let me just pick out a couple items here so you don't think I'm just, Chicken Little. Here it is. There are few more dangerous places for a leader to exist than an echo chamber. That's not what I want to hear from the people in my network. I want to be called out even when it stings. I want to be challenged even when it's painful. And so, Chip, let me do that. So, we all need that. The 100 realtors that work for you need that. In order to do some self-examination. And so that's what you're always doing in your books, is self-examination, introspection. And by the way, that's totally absent in your TV shows. My mom watched hundreds of your TV shows. I watched parts of dozens of them. And that side of you is never in TV. And so the way I want to challenge you is to say, are you really living your authentic self by not sharing that with the world when the world needs it? And so in the other book, your other book, let me just mention that quickly. You said you want to do a bridge building summit. You said if somebody out there has an idea about how to heal the world, send it to me. If you have, in the other part of entry in your book, it talks about your vision of eliminating the culture of fear from the world. So if I could tell you how to do that in the next 2 minutes, would you jump on it? Would you talk to me more about it if you didn't understand it? Would you talk to your wife or your coworkers? Are they all interested in the same thing? Have you found and identified the people? How many people in your network have come to you about that book and said, I got an idea about how to do that bridge building summit? Well, I got a huge library on it. I got 11 hours of video where I went through the answers from 2002 with Chaplain George Russell Barber. He was the last living chaplain who landed on Normandy Beach on D-Day. And back around 2001, I met him, and he gave me these Bibles and I read them. And I've got them, I showed them in one of my other videos. The copies he gave me have stars and highlights and sticky notes throughout them because I read both of them, the King James Version and the New International, is that what it's called, version. And so that's your vision. And so the answer, so I said, let me back up. I said I was going to say it in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, how to cure the world, 6 billion people. Well, first, if you create a TV show, which you could do in 2 days, where you just start filming for an hour. Hey, let's start talking about this stuff. Hey, what did you write here? Chip, okay, I disagree with this one. You are way off, man. I've already been reading it here. See, I got a bunch of notes here. Okay, so, and then you start filming it. Are we going to be in prime time in a week or in a few days? Maybe. Who would be again just simply broadcasting a discussion about the cure for these problems that we're discussing? Okay, that kid getting bullied, like millions of other kids getting bullied, millions of kids now need the solution to bullying. And they're not getting it. But they can get it if we create a TV show in which we talk about these issues and we say to our leaders, hey, out of the $4 trillion you're spending every year in healthcare, could we use some of that for programs that get people healthy at all ages? And so that's what's in the key letter. And so in the last week, I've been getting together this big package of all my work over the last 20 years, and I was going to pass it out to dozens of people on this list here and have them consider it. Okay, but that 1-2-page letter, I haven't been able to get people to read that over the last 6 years. I've given it out to hundreds of people. Pastors who have a congregation of 10,000. And they said, I don't want to deal with that. And they chased me out of there. Okay? And I got it all on video. So just because I was saying, hey, there's this 1-2-page letter which can transform the medical system and save 2 million people a year who are dying from illnesses which are completely reversible with healthy living. According to Dr. Dean Ornish at UC San Francisco, you know how many people don't know about him? He thinks he's famous. And because he walks around and people say hi to him all the time. Okay, that's not famous. Okay, medical system, I've had dozens of people that have been treating my dad, and I said, do you know about Dr. Dean Ornish? No, who's he? Okay, that is a disaster. So Dr. Dean Ornish knows the cure for 1 million of those deaths, which he specifically has discussed and stated for 25 years, 30 years. And it's in his dozen books that I have. So he's not getting a TV show, and that's what I want to do in this 1 hour. He will be part of it. I've already invited him. My friend has known him for 30 years, 40 years. She went to high school with him, and apparently he maybe got bullied, and she stood up against the bullies. Okay, so that's what this discussion is about. People are getting bullied. Children are getting bullied. People at all levels of society are getting bullied. And so let me go through the key people in the next 1 minute, and then I'm going to go 2 minutes through the cure that I said I was going to get to that's in this book. Okay? So Sherry, 50 years ago, had a death experience. She went into the medical system and got horrific care. The story is in this autobiography here. And she died and came back. And she had a vision from God of global healing by revealing to all the people that there's a problem with post-traumatic stress in the human population. And so that's what this is about. This was caused by post-traumatic stress. The violence that we're talking about is a cycle of violence. And here are the books, what I go through in the other things, in the other videos that I'm posting. Harvard, Preventing Youth Violence. Post-traumatic stress. That kid had post-traumatic stress. He got bullied for years. He didn't get treatment programs. He had post-traumatic stress. Then he got kicked out of school because he was failing in school and he didn't want to go anymore. And then they kicked him out, and then a month later he went and killed a bunch of kids. And so that's as plain as day. And so I'm going to go through a couple critical things, okay? It's in these books, and I go more in detail to what they're saying. Harvard professor, we can cure violence. That's what he says. He's got a lot of experience, but his voice has never been heard by the majority. And the reforms he advocates for are not being followed at all by our leaders. And so that's the information that I took to our Texas legislators after Bush in 2004, because Barr McClelland's one son was the head of Medicare and Medicaid, and I think the FDA. I don't have the notes right here. So I got it to him. He was a doctor from Stanford University. My dad's book got endorsed by a professor at Stanford University, Dr. Farquhar. I have his books. He's a specialist on healthy living and heart attacks and stress. Okay. And Dr. Mark McClelland got my book, got my proposal. So did his brother Scott, who was Bush's press secretary. So I got the confirmations from Barr McClelland. At the same time, and here's one of the other critical issues, Barr's ex-wife produced the Forgotten Children report, which is right here. Forgotten Children. The Forgotten Children. 2004, Carol Keaton Strayhorn. So in 2004, the same time I was contacting through Barr McClelland, Dr. Mark McClelland, and Scott, their mother produced the Forgotten Children report that said a bunch of kids in Texas are getting a bunch of bad drugs and bad combinations. And it's making them sick, and they're in abusive environments, and they're getting pulled out of families because there's no counseling for those families. And then they go into bad environments where there's not being supervised, and they get abused some more, and then they get given a bunch of drugs, and then they're shuffled around from home to home, and it's an emergency. Okay, and that went to them, and it got buried. So Mama got squashed. She got ridiculed in the media, a little support, a little bit ridiculed, and her sons did nothing. They ignored my communications. Okay, that was under Bush. Bush was president. Okay, so what I'm getting at and tying together, if you can follow the meandering road, I got to meander because it's a complicated story. Life is complicated. And I've been working on this for 20 years. It's a long story. So the things Chuck Norris says in here, 2 million people are dying every year from illnesses which, if we exercise and eat right, then we will fix the problem. Amazingly. And we got to create a platform where we can talk about these issues and have a national discussion. And this is an important segue because I'm going to deliver this to Chuck Norris. Hopefully he's going to watch this video because it's going to be online on Vimeo and on YouTube. And on Vimeo, it's The Mission TV. Vimeo.com/TheMissionTV. YouTube, it's going to all be organized on themission.tv. That's www.themission.tv. And then I'm also organizing the earthcommunicationsoffice.org, which was created probably 30 years ago, and it had dozens of the top celebrities on it. Pierce Brosnan, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bonnie Reese. And so I've been communicating with them for 20 years, the founder, the secretary for the organization, saying, let's recreate it so that we can create a communications platform for communicating to the world about critical issues, solutions, and problems. And so now on that website, I've got at least a dozen videos of the most important videos of all time, which have the solution to everything that ails the planet, including global warming. Because the cause of global warming is human behavior. And if humans don't care enough to exercise and eat right to save their own lives, then they're not going to care about global warming. So I sent that idea 4 years ago to the Sea Shepherd Society, and they slammed the door in my face. John Paul Dejoria is part of that, if I could segue. John Paul Dejoria is an Austin billionaire who has a video on TED Talks, a TED Talk video on my website, in which he says energy that humans carry about their attitudes moves from one person to the other, and humanity as a whole is evolving to a higher place. Okay, I paraphrased it completely. But my friend Sherry has also known him for 30 years, a very good friend, but has not spent a ton of time with him recently. But she told him about her vision. I'm sure he integrated that into his TED Talk. I can hear it. And so the way for that evolution to go global is to create a TV show about the path to healing. So as Chip Gaines wanted to do with his rest of his life, and his wife, Joanna. And so Chip wrote about it. He was the author of the book, but they're both on board. So that's what they want to do with their life. Are they listening now? Do you know them? Can you invite them to listen? Let's see. As I said, this is going to these key people. Let me mention them. But first, let me do the 1-minute cure, which is in this book because I promised it and I keep procrastinating. And then I'm going to mention this, okay? In this book, if you just read the paragraph, I'm not willing to backslide into operating under a counterfeit version of myself. It's not worth risking everything around me, from my marriage to my family to our company. And these things are just too valuable to consider compromising simply because I opted to pretend to be someone I'm not. So it's really easy, even for people that read this, to read it and not absorb it deeply into your soul. And so the only way to do that is to have a group meeting where you're in a group of 10 and you read it and then you talk about it with different people. And so Chip, throughout all this, it's like the missing link. Chip, are you talking about this stuff to anybody around you? Are you like sitting down with your employees? You know, one of your realtors is my friend now. He's helping me with the house. And he's a really nice guy. And he hasn't read this book. So I'm getting a feeling like he could really benefit. And he's saying that people that he knows and care about in his family, from our discussions, and I said, this is exactly the program that they need. The one that I'm talking about. So I'm talking about creating a program in primetime TV. Okay, there's a couple different ideas, if I can just get them, in case this is the first time you're hearing all this. Okay, it's in my 2-page letter. One is just in 2 days, just starting to talk about these ideas. The other one is 100 people. The other TV show is 100 people living in a deluxe hotel for a month. They exercise, they eat right, they bring the stress down, and they read these books, or at least key entries here, and then they talk about it in groups. So in order to make this, take it all the way to the deepest part of your soul, and if I can get to why people are getting hypertension, etc., etc. So what I found out working with my dad, he is Mr. Hypertension. He was in the first group of kidney specialists when they created the specialists. That's one of the critical factors. The kidney is a critical factor in how people get high blood pressure. So he was a doctor for 50 years. He was a clinical professor of medicine at UCLA for 35 years. He was a super pioneer in the field of healthy living. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people are alive and healthy today because of my dad. Some of them are famous. And the reason is that by being a professor at UCLA in 1978 and jumping on board to elevate Pritikin into the public consciousness by endorsing his program and co-creating a hotel. They brought in an investor and bought a hotel in Miami Beach, and then 100 people would stay there for a month, pay $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, and exercise and eat right and bring the stress down. And so, well, that's part of the cure, but the problem is they didn't go deep enough. And I'm going to try to wrap it up soon. Okay, so the problem is they didn't go deep enough. So John Candy, the famous comedian, got convinced to go through that program because he was super overweight, like huge overweight, 100 extra pounds. You know what it's like to carry around 100 extra pounds? I pick up the cat litter bag that's 40 pounds from my car and I carry it 50 feet and I am about to drop. Okay, if I had to carry that around all day, I don't know what I'd do. So John Candy was carrying more than 2 times that, over 100 pounds. Was it over 200 pounds of extra weight? I don't know. He went into the Pritikin program for couple weeks, maybe a month, I don't know how long. But they didn't go deeply into this disconnection with your feelings. So what you talk about all in here, Chip, is the disconnection between your feelings. If you're disconnected from your feelings, then you can't talk about them, you can't let them out, and then they determine your behavior as you're trying to cope with those toxic feelings from a disconnected family that you grew up with. So he grew up from a broken, disconnected family. He had a broken relationship with his dad. That's in the public record of a time he was interviewed. I think People magazine. And so in the Pritikin program, you go in, you exercise, you eat right, you learn how to reduce your stress, you do yoga. I don't know if John Candy did yoga, but he probably didn't do yoga. They barely do exercise. They do some exercise, but people who can't really exercise, they go in and out of the program, and then they think, well, I'm just going to change my diet. And they go home and they try to change their diet. And according to Carl Reiner, the famous comedian, who was a spokesman for the Pritikin program for 30 years or more, and convinced John Candy to do it. So he was in a movie with John Candy, and he convinced him to do the Pritikin program. He went to the Pritikin program, he came out, they were both still in the movie, and he observed John Candy couldn't stop eating the junk food, he couldn't stop smoking, he wasn't exercising, so it doesn't work. So John Candy died a few years later from a heart attack, like 1 million other people in America every year, or something like that. So Chuck said, well, if we have a show or a platform where we can talk about these issues, then we could change them. That's what I've been trying to do for 20 years, is create a show. And so I teamed up with Carl Reiner's adopted daughter, granddaughter, Tracy Reiner, and we were going to create a show in primetime TV. That was a few years later with Maria Dorfner. So Maria Dorfner has a whole book about it. She was a CNBC producer, and she had this idea of creating a show, and she was working on it before me with Penny Marshall, the famous actress and producer, Penny Marshall, her mother. Okay, so together they were working on this. Went all the way up to the top at NBC, ABC, CBS. Jeff Zucker, is that his name? Green-lighted it. Kept getting derailed. It got 100% derailed. Okay, 2006. When was the book? See, I'm writing this all in a letter, but it's complicated. Okay? And unfortunately, this talk is now taking an entire hour. And so most people are never going to last. What are we going to do about it? But that's why they're not getting this information. Okay, but I know I'm getting through to a few people, and that's who this is going to. And so let me go quickly go through who the recipients are of this. So John Paul Dejoria lives close by. My friend knows him, is going to get it to him. He's going to see this video. He sold Patron tequila for $5 billion a few years ago. I invite him to take part of that money and invest in creating a TV show about the cure, which he talks about in his TED Talk. And his son and wife have a program here in Austin. I've already spoken to the director and one of the psychologists, and they have the cure for the problem too. They have a ranch, and they have a program where wealthy people who can afford a $20,000 program can go attend it and be cured and treated for post-traumatic stress, for addictions and other problems. Okay, I told them millions of people, 100 million Americans who are obese need the same program. Sherry has the same program, and she has already talked to John Paul Dejoria about investing in it and taking it all over the world. He was part of the Earth Communications office and invested in it 30 years ago. He was on the board of directors. So I'm going to invite him now through this video. and through the grapevine to recreate the Earth Communications Office as a portal for communication about these critical issues. And so that's step one of the cure. That's the 2-day cure, is just talking. I'm inviting these key people to participate. Chip and Joanna Gaines. I sent them a dozen of these books over a month ago. I think they got it. I already sent them my 2-page letter, which I'm asking everybody to read. So the key people this is going to is, as I mentioned, Chuck Norris. His brother already got it, Aaron Norris. I got a receipt through email that he got it from his website. I went to school with his kids. That's detailed in another video. I have their high school yearbook right here with them in it and me in it. I showed that in the other video on my website. It's also going to Jared Padalecki. He has 2 bars in downtown Austin on 6th Street. And his co-star from his TV show Supernatural, which I watched for a decade, his co-star has a 200-acre ranch in Austin, and I already delivered my proposals there and a copy of my dad's book. And so I'm inviting them to participate also. So Jared has a vision of getting the cure for depression out to the world. And he knows what it is. And it's detailed in the group that he partnered with called To Write Love on Her Arms. And so the founder of that, who I already communicated with a few years ago, knows the cure for depression that can help people like this. But it needs a platform in primetime TV. The shooter. So these things can be prevented by getting the cure, not only just step one, just even talked about in primetime TV. And so if they refuse to put it in primetime TV, well, okay, we'll do a video. We'll have these 4 super celebrities on board talking about it. And so I know I'm meandering a little bit. I know I'm leaving a few things out, but I revisit them in my other videos for the things that I didn't get to. And so, but each one of these ideas I'm discussing, I'm saying, please, if these people that I'm communicating with come together in Austin, together we can make it happen. And it'll be heard all over the world. You know, if you create 1 hour of video, it takes 1 hour, and 1 billion people can see it. Because I think there may be 1 billion people who speak English. 1 billion people can see it within a week. And then it could be translated into every language, and therefore 6 billion people could see it within a month. And so, are the ideas I'm sharing in your books worth taking global? I'm saying simply that's the cure. So the cure is simply creating a focal point so that the world can have access to it, because they don't have access to my library. For 20 years, I've been taking these books and my proposals, and I'm going to motor mouth through a few more, experiences. Okay? In 2008, I took it to the Texas legislators. (2008), and the video is on their website. So the same ideas that you have in your books is what I took to the Texas legislators, because 4 years after the Forgotten Children report, which they forgot about, they remembered it. And it was as bad as ever. And so they had an 8-hour hearing, which is on their website. And I have the transcript, which I'm going to drop off to a dozen people. Because now those same legislators are looking at this thing, and they created a report on it. And so they're the ones that allowed the school system to become what it is, because they've had hearings on bullying and they didn't enable a dime of money, or maybe it was a few $1,000,000. So they made a requirement for the schools to deal with bullying. We have passed a mandate that the schools shall deal with bullying, even though they are overwhelmed and overloaded, and it's 1:30 ratio of students to kids, or worse. So they are churning them and burning them. And they're doing a fantastic job in probably 90% of the cases, I guess. Or no, was it a third that never make it to the finish line? Okay, it's not a fault of the teachers. One of my best friends was a teacher for 30 years, and he had to quit because he couldn't take it anymore. Okay, so those poor teachers are in a torture chamber, and they're getting sick too from the stress. So the kids in our schools are having toxic stress overload. I'm sorry, I'm tense, but I'm tense. Okay, my dad and my aunt are getting horrific medical care. The horrific medical care, as you will see in my 2-page letter, has been created by our leaders. 19 of them are in a video. President Obama, President Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Senator Rockefeller, from 2010. Okay, so that was another time I tried to intervene. I got the same ideas in your book, Chuck, and in your book, I got the program idea. Let's create a program where we're dealing with all this stuff, because I got the library of experts who know all about that disconnection, which I'm gotten to, and I've already discussed and posted on my website in the other videos, so I'm not going to go through all of it again. Okay? Now I'm losing track. Okay? So I went to the Senate. You're going to see the video. It's 3 minutes. And I said, the senators, 5 of them that are still there, 5 of them that are now having the hearing, 5 of them that created the conditions that created this problem, now they're having the hearing. And they come to the wrong conclusions. I've read the report. I got it printed here. So, Senator Jane Nelson was there. Senator Robert Nichols. Senator Dan Patrick, who's now the Lieutenant Governor of Texas. Senator Royce West, still in power. Senator Judith Zaffirini. All of them are still in the committee overseeing health care. And so the state of the country, I'm bringing to you 2 things. What I experienced in Texas legislative circles and what I experienced at the highest level in Washington. My communications were shut out, and this is not being paid for. So Chuck Norris has a program called Kick Drugs Out of America. And I'm going to go back to a few loose ends. So on this picture here that I put together in 2004 or so with Chuck Norris, so that picture is from Walker, Texas Ranger, where there's a kid who's being bullied in school, just like the shooter was for a decade. The kid he was 17 years old, no, 18. And he shot 19 kids 3 months ago. Okay? He was getting bullied. And so the picture there is about an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger, where a kid was getting bullied and by a bunch of bullies that were trying to get him to deal or take drugs, if I recall correctly. And then he became suicidal, and so he was on top of a 2-story building threatening to jump off. And so the police were called, and Walker got up on the roof and he tried to talk him down for a few minutes. And the kid just jumped. And so Walker ran over to the edge, and the face in that poster is when he was looking down at the kid dead. So that's the look on his face. And so throughout the rest of the show was about Kickstart Kids, which is his charity in Houston, which is about kicking drugs out of the schools across America, kicking the bullies, helping the bullies. And so I don't remember if in that show he helped the bullies too. Probably. So, but I put it in there so that we could create and fund those ideas through a radical change in the country. And I shot that poster up to Obama and his team because I'm really persistent. And so that was a couple years after I met with all the senators. And so the senators here in Texas, 2008, you can see the 3-minute video, I said, millions of kids across the country have been misdiagnosed with mental illnesses when they just have toxic stress overload. Can you look at this chart? And I passed out the chart to all of them, including Dr. Bob Duell. He's now at Hunt Regional Medical Partners. He was a senator, now he's a doctor here in Austin. I'm going to take this to him. And Dr. Kyle Janek, he's an anesthesiologist here in Austin. He was a senator in the room there. And so I'm going to take it to him too. So if I could just get back on track now. Yeah. Oh yeah. So as my dad in California is lying there headed towards death, suffering, he healed thousands of people as a doctor. He got them on the right track. When they were getting bad drugs, he got them off of them. And he tried to reform the medical system so that when your family members or you would go into it, you wouldn't get a bad drug. But he got defunded. Then he had to take care of hundreds of nursing home patients who were coming to him on over a dozen drugs, just like millions of seniors are right now. And so for 10 years, my dad had to see all these people coming in, and I've got an hour-long video of him telling that story before he developed dementia, which I'm going to post. And so he would have these people coming in, these seniors, they were dying, taking a dozen drugs and dying from the illnesses which the drugs are supposed to treat. Do you understand? The drugs don't work, America. And if you've heard this far, then you don't have the problem in Chip Gaines' book, which is to be disconnected from what's happening in the reality around us. And so, Chip, that's what you were seeing when you were talking to people and they didn't even know how to answer a simple question. And when you say that there's an epidemic of people who are inauthentic, people who are disconnected from their feelings, they get sick and they die from heart attacks. They develop hypertension. It builds up all the stress inside of them. Instead of talking about, in your books, as you evolve, you go through evolutions. You tell your 20-year evolution of your character. And it goes through these, you self-evolved. But other people aren't doing that. Do you notice? They need a program. So that's what that 2-page letter is about. Out of $4 trillion going to sickness care, I asked our leaders, can we spend $1 trillion of that on healthy living solutions? Like programs that are a month long, either residential or from home. If you put it in a TV show, then millions of people at home can watch it. They can see people going through an evolution in television. Watch the change in their character over a month or longer. And then they can go through the same thing at home, in their church. You know, those churches are empty. What if a church could be full for an hour or two, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock during the week? Maybe somebody could get a few hours off, a half day during the middle of the week to go through one of these programs that I'm talking about. So what I'm talking about, bottom line, is creating these books into a program that people do. The value is in the books, but you only sold 1 million copies, I bet, or less, or more. There's 300 million Americans, 6 billion people on the planet. It's got to go into TV. That's the solution. So I've been working on that. So I'm getting that proposal to this team of people that I think are going to understand this. Maybe only 10 people are going to watch this video. That's a possibility. Then they'll join this project, and together we'll create the TV show. And then maybe it'll get watched by a lot more people. I don't know, but I'm going to try to wrap it up. See if I left a few loose ends here. And so I started working on that. I got it up to the highest levels. This poster and my proposal. Senator Obama, 2009, I think. I'm putting the whole timeline in there. So, went to John Podesta, Center for American Progress. At the time I bought this, got the record on Amazon, I bet, Amazon.com, and got it to him and 30 members of his team who were movers and shakers in Washington. I got it to 30 members through their website. The bios were there. These two on his team, it was a think tank with important people who wrote books. So these guys said, yeah, Chris, I like your proposal. I'll help you. Brian Katulis, The Prosperity Agenda, What the World Wants from America and What We Need in Return. Senior Fellow at the Center for American Progress. So Podesta worked for Clinton, President Clinton. This guy said, yeah, I like your stuff. Okay. Michael Boylan, The Good, the True, and the Beautiful, A Quest for Meaning. He wrote it. And he is a professor at University of Arlington, Virginia. And so he was part of this think tank, 30 people or 40 or 50 experts on all kinds of subjects, health, and connections to the top leaders in Washington. So then P.J. Crowley, he had a role in the Clinton White House, an advisor to President Clinton and the Joint Chief of Staff when President Clinton was president. Okay, now Bush was president, Obama was running for office. I sent a letter to Obama, Senator Obama, a bunch of senators, congresspeople, and 30 people at the Center for American Progress. P.J. Crowley, Philip J. Crowley, former advisor to President Clinton, loved my idea. He wrote me a long email, which I can share with you. It'll be in my final package, which is like a book. He said, Chris, I love your ideas. It's really timely, because I was pulling together a bunch of different societal problems, like illnesses, which is preventable with and reversible with healthy living, and creating a national mission to get everybody healthy. Same ideas I shared with President Bush's team, but it evolved and gotten better by then into an idea for a TV show called The Mission and the Health Project. And so Senator Obama's staff got it. I got an email back saying I'm going to pass this on to the right person. All these people, John Podesta got it. John Podesta at the Center for American Progress said, Chris, I'm going to bring in these 3 people that work with me, and we want to look at this idea. And I sent him another email. Then we talked on the phone. Then we set up a meeting with one of his representatives. Around that time, either before or after, I don't remember, Senator Obama became president. And then I met with one of the representatives. Podesta became the transition manager for who's going to get appointed to what under President Obama. He's in charge of everybody that gets, it goes through him. John Podesta. So the representative that worked with all of them slammed the door in my face. She met with me in Los Angeles. I flew out to Los Angeles to meet with her. Within 10 minutes, she was going, we don't have anything to do with this. It's not for us. Bye. It ended very quickly. Then P.J. Crowley, Philip J. Crowley, no relation to the other Crowley that some of you may know about from a long time ago, 100 years ago. I don't think. Anyway, he became the Deputy Secretary of State under Hillary Clinton. And he didn't want anything to do with me after that. So they got the plan with these ideas. Create a TV show about getting people healthy, a national mission. 100 people in prime time go through a healthy living program, just like the Pritikin program. It's all in the letter. The exact same idea I'm pitching right now to you guys. Right now. And let me bring it all together. You said that's exactly what you want to do, is create a summit, a bridge building summit. You don't want to do all the stuff you've been doing, fixing up houses, a TV show like that. You want to create, you didn't say you wanted to create a TV show about how to do it, but that's the cure for the culture of fear. So the culture of fear, which you talk about in your book, is what's making everybody sick. And the reason we have a culture of fear, to tie up some of the loose ends, is that that's what we're putting out there through television. Everything is fear. Everything. You need to be afraid. Don't go to the gym. Don't go to church. You are in danger. Stay in your home. Don't even go to work. Okay? Where's the logic in that, sir? For millions of people to lose their job and not be able to eat and get homeless, which it's all skyrocketing. Okay? You're giving us bad advice, Nancy Pelosi. And I got a video of you and your friends who are running the show, and they it proves what they're doing is not good. It's from 2010. It's on my website. I posted it 8 years ago, I think. Okay, but if you got to watch this movie, if you have watched what I've said so far, you got to watch this movie, because what's creating it is the alternative, and the cure is not getting a moment in prime time TV. So the conclusion at the end of this movie is the reason why the world is about to go over a cliff into Armageddon territory with disasters that are global. This is the fictional movie. I'm not saying that's going to happen in reality. Okay, is because of the forces that control the narrative which is being fed to the entire population is all negative, and it's not about the cure. And so the proof of the pudding is in the eating. As I've said in the other videos that I've posted, there's a long story. Tracy Reiner and Penny Marshall, who are super celebrities and super well connected, with Maria Dorfner, and the whole story is in Maria Dorfner's book, which I sent to Chuck Norris, Matthew McConaughey, and Chip and Joanna Gaines. In that story, they shopped the idea up to the top at CBS and NBC, as I stated before. CBS, NBC, ABC. And those guys are super celebrities, so they were able to shop it right up to the top executives. And they got the green light all the way, and then it got derailed like off to Pluto land. And so they dropped it all. Okay, then I came into the picture to connect the dots. My friend went to high school. My friend, who I've known for 30 years and I'm Facebook friends with, is friends with Tracy Reiner. He went to high school. No, I met him 30 years ago, but he went to high school with Tracy Reiner, and they were friends back then, and they stayed in touch. And so he introduced me to her, and she was really intrigued. Oh, wow, this guy that made my grandfather, alive today at 95, okay, is talking to me, and he's saying he figured out how to cure post-traumatic stress by finding all these books from the top experts in the world on post-traumatic stress. Of course, now I would tell her, well, these guys understand the cure too, and he says he wants to cure it in his book. Okay, so now they're looking at my proposal. But how do I get them to watch this video? That is the question. Okay, and I'm meandering again. Okay, but these guys know the cure. It's to come together as a team, and I'm creating the team. And I'm going to be going down to these guys' house. Jared Padalecki, he was in a TV show for 15 or 20 years called Supernatural. And now, ironically, he is in the new Walker, Texas Ranger series that Chuck Norris retired. Weird, huh? How these things come together. Okay, Jared Padalecki, as I said, his partner in the show, his brother in the TV show, okay, he has 200 acres in Austin. I delivered the same books to them because Jared is on a mission to cure depression globally. Briefly, he got super depressed. He was filming that TV show for working 20-hour shifts probably. And he got super depressed, like tears for hours. Okay, I don't know how long. Okay, they called in the doctor. The doctor said, you have depression, severe depression. Okay, just like that kid who killed a bunch of people a few months ago in Uvalde. Okay, nobody went into the kid though. Okay, because it's not available like free mental health care. And you'll understand why if you'll read my 2-page letter. So, I'm meandering again. So this is a long trek. 20 years. I haven't paid a dime in 20 years for doing all this work. We have sought funding, but we have not achieved it because when people hear this subject, they don't want to hear more. That's what Chip Gaines was finding. As he was trying to talk to people, they would change the subject. They didn't know what he was talking about. Okay, so now he's silent. Okay, he's not taking these ideas, and that's where I'm challenging you, Chip. If you actually get this far, I challenge you to take it global. You're not living your own advice. Your own advice is to share it with the people around you, share with the world. Your employees don't know the value here. Their friends and family have hypertension. Let me tie it all together with how it is a matter of life and death. They have hypertension because of stress disorders. Dr. Charles Figley is the top expert in the world on post-traumatic stress, along with about 10 others. Okay, I met him 20 years ago in person in Florida because I recognized, and I told him in person, you're the top expert in the world. And his wife was there, and I said, we got to take this global because everybody has it, don't they? Yes. And the symptoms are hypertension, which 95% of people on the planet get, unless they die from starvation, okay, or suicide or something. Okay, so the cure, I'm going to look around for a few more loose ends here. Okay, I don't have ADHD anymore, but I just want to make sure I didn't leave any loose ends, and so I'm trying to tie it all up. Jerry Spence said, if you don't understand people's prejudices, you might as well be hollering at fence posts. And so he wrote 3 books that sold millions of books, but most people don't read. The other book he wrote was How to Argue and Win Every Time, and that's where he wrote that. If you don't understand people's prejudices, you might as well be hollering at fence posts. So Chuck, quit hollering at fence posts. Matthew McConaughey, please, you got to stop that. It's counterproductive. I've been doing it for 20 years. We got to put our heads together so that, let me explain people's prejudices. That same phenomenon that Chip was running into of saying ideas and sharing them and being tuned out, I know that's why you're not taking your ideas global, because you think nobody's going to listen. What you have to do is just do it, and then you'll find your audience. And so that's the solution. And you're going to die. It's going to make you sick. Because you said if you cut yourself off from your real calling in life, it'll make you ill. It'll make you unhappy. And so I suspect that that's your experience, because I've met a couple of your people working with you, and they don't know the value in this book, and you may not either. Okay? At moments, I'm sure you do. Okay, but if you really knew, you'd be screaming and jumping up and down like I am for 20 years. So 20 years ago, that's what I started doing. In that 11 hours of video on YouTube with Chaplain Barber, I started 20 years ago, and then he died a year later. And that's a matter of reality. His autobiography is on Amazon.com if you want to read all about him. But in that video, I started talking about what's in your books. And so I'm showing to you and explaining to you why I am so committed. And so I'm going to deliver, this video is going to be on my website, and I'm going to deliver to each one of these people on this list, because they're all local here. And I'm trying to ignite a revolution before my dad and my aunt die. It's very urgent. It's very urgent. And you know what? I should have put that at the beginning. But I'm trying to ignite something that causes people to come together and create some resources and solution to save my dad and my aunt. And they both are afflicted by what you're talking about. And so I've been recognizing it for 20 years, this disconnection from your inner feelings. And it led her to get cancer, And that's a story I told in my 2 videos on curing cancer and him to get dementia. And I told that story too. And the solution, again, is in the 2-page letter where I have the idea. Out of $1 trillion, you shift $1 trillion into healthy living solutions, which includes programs that have this content, so that people are sitting down in a room together and talking about it and going deep. Chip, that's what it takes. Together, you and I could start a program where people sit down and they do these things. Okay, that's an idea. Okay, but I'm challenging you to live your dreams. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up in the next 3 minutes. I swear to God. Okay, because now I can ramble. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. It's getting a little hot in here because I'm in a makeshift studio. Here, I put it together with my own hands, and all these books, which I put together in my library, a lot of them 20 years ago, and then subsequently, I found the cure to everything in there. Okay? Seriously. Almost everything. Okay? Don't want to exaggerate. Okay? But I went through it. Okay? Most poverty, violence, addictions, it's all traceable to toxic stress overload, and I've gone through the books in other proposals. Okay? So, where do we go from here? If anybody made it to the end here, okay, I got to do a home run with the last minute. You got a minute to win it. Okay? That's the message I'm thinking of. Okay? It takes a couple days to simply come together and start filming and exercising your constitutional right to share the truth with the world about what's going to help them. Okay, but it takes courage, because things can happen when people don't want the world to know the cure for what ails them. Okay, so people are scared, but I'm not scared of nothing, and I'm inviting you to come together, because nothing is going to happen, I believe, by the simple act. We don't have tanks on every corner like they had in Nazi Germany. My friend Chaplain Barber had to get in a boat with a bunch of young men and go across the ocean. He handed out the Bibles, and he had to go, these young men had to go into the cold, freezing cold water and go through a hail of bullets in order to get onto the beach and get to Hitler, to stop him from doing a genocide. Okay? Most of them died, just like those little kids. Okay? These kids died in vain unless we fix the problem together. And it's only going to take like 10 people to create a beachhead of truth and honesty here in Austin, Texas in the next week. So, I'm going to be hand delivering this. And there's a list of people. They're all local. And I'm going to hand deliver it. And so, Chaplain Barber had to bury all those men and pick out the grave site. And he tells the story in that 11 hours. You and I don't have to face bullets. Okay? Do people die when they, stand up and say, hey, I want to cure things? Like John Lennon and Martin Luther King and JFK? Yeah, okay. But then thousands of people come together, and then they try to figure out what happened. And so if anything happens to anybody who's watching this video, if anybody out there is paranoid, okay, and that's what I call it, there's no reason to be paranoid, okay? We don't have Nazis on every corner if we walk outside. Nothing's happened to me except, derailing my funding. Okay, there have been some people in my network over 20 years who have died. Tracy Reiner was best friends with Carrie Fisher from the day she was born, I think. Okay, because they were family friends growing up. Tracy Reiner's mother, Penny Marshall, was dating Garfunkel when Carrie was married to Paul Simon. And so they knew each other really well. And so Tracy Reiner was going to talk to Carrie Fisher because Carrie Fisher had been misdiagnosed as having bipolar disorder when she actually had post-traumatic stress, just like millions of other people, as I told the state senators in 2008. And so I talked to Carrie. Carrie Fisher was going to talk to Tracy in length. She had already been working a few years earlier on creating a TV show to break the same story about that we have an epidemic of post-traumatic stress. So for sure, she had already talked to Carrie Fisher, her best friend and family member, practically family. So then Tracy Reiner got on the phone with me and the former chief of staff to Senator Kent Conrad. Senator Kent Conrad is in a 5-minute video with President Obama and Biden. That's the whole story in the letter that I keep talking about, the 2-page letter. The 2-page letter is really all I need to pass out. Millions of seniors are getting poisoned now and for the last 2010, that's 12 years, and before. You hear in the video from 2010, which is broadcast on CNN and C-SPAN, and Senator Kent Conrad says millions of seniors are taking 16 medications in bad combinations. It's making them sick and bankrupting Medicare and killing them. Of course, he didn't say killing them. He didn't say people are dying. But he said that it's making them sick, and he implied that it was killing them. They buried the whole issue. So half of them are still in power running the show in Washington. So tie it all together if you've heard it so far. I'm asking people to come together, create a platform for fixing these problems. The Forgotten Children Report, millions of kids getting over-medicated, millions of kids in foster care getting over-medicated. Veterans, hundreds of thousands getting over-medicated, 22 per day killing themselves because they're not getting the right treatment. So I've been trying to intervene. Dr. Figley from 20 years ago knows the cure. I've been trying to create a intervention to get his cure out to the world. So his cure is the same cure which Jared Padalecki has been advocating for in his foundation. It's the same cure which is in Chip and Chip's book. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. We are down to the last minute. Okay, and here is the last untied end. I realize that this might only get seen by 10 people. Okay, but 10 people could fund it because they have $1 billion or something. Come together as a team. This requires 50,000 maybe. And you know what? I'm not begging somebody, okay, because I've never gotten a dime for this whole thing. I'm saying it only if somebody can easily afford it. I don't want anybody to sacrifice anything because we are all under stress. And no, I don't want to give anybody more stress. This is the most important book. Okay, Chip, you're wondering why nobody heard what you said. You wonder why there isn't a market for a TV show about what's in your books. Because you haven't jumped up to create a TV show for what's in your books, and it's shifting in my makeshift studio and causing a problem here. Okay? Sun is going down another 1,000 people died from heart attacks today. My dad's going to die in a week or two, and so is my aunt because of really horrific medical care. That's in the 2-page letter. Millions of seniors getting poisoned with 16 drugs. That's what's in the video from 2010 with Obama and Biden. My dad got poisoned with one bad drug, and the medical system won't pay for what he needs. And that's killing him. And so by coming together in a couple days, we can create an intervention that gets my dad and saves him. Please, for God's sake, if you got this far, help me save my dad. He is just as loved as all of these kids that got shot. Except my dad's alive. Okay? And those kids are looking down from heaven saying, what the hell happened to us? Okay? And the people that care about them that went before were watching the whole thing saying, when are you guys going to create a TV show in prime time for the cure to what ails us? Okay? So I'm looking for an honest man, an honest woman who cares enough about their passion to take it global. Okay? And I'm going to take this right to Joanna and Chip to their doorstep because I know where their office is. I can find their home address, but I don't want to creep them out. Okay, Matthew already got my dad's book through the mail, and so I'm going to go to his house. It's a couple hours from here. Okay? Because I believe he's going to help us. Because he said he grew up in Uvalde and went to the school where the massacre occurred. And he's really pissed off, and he did a 10-minute press conference in the White House saying, we got to make a change. America, we have got to make a change. Okay? So, just another minute. I'm going to read out of this book because this is the final. I skipped over this too fast. The reason why people couldn't hear you, Chip, and they can't hear you now, if they're not pounding on your door about this book, if they're not pounding on your door, they didn't read it, they don't know the value. It's because people get disconnected from their feelings and their real needs. This is a Harvard professor. She wrote this book, The Myth of Sanity, Divided Consciousness and the Promise of Awareness. Martha Stout, PhD, written 20 years ago, I bet. She was and is a professor at Harvard. She said that there's an epidemic of dissociation. That's when you go through some traumatic experiences and it creates a disconnection between your feelings or just being, too many stressful experiences in your mind. Cause a split between your mind, your body, and your soul. And I got to shut that. Okay? And that's what most human beings on the planet have, that to some degree. And that's how they develop hypertension. 95% of Americans develop hypertension as they get older. Hypertension means you have a lot of tension. And so all those times you got bullied or traumatic experience, broken family, divorce, broken heart, it all gets stuffed. And Jared Padalecki and his friend, those two people in a TV show called Supernatural, they were both in that show for 20 years. And in that show, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Because there's Dean and Sam, are the two brothers. They fight evil all over the planet. It's an awesome show. I've watched half of the episodes. Dean gets sent to hell, like really, in the show, I mean. Really, but fictionally. Okay, and he gets horrific experiences, like witnessing a mass shooting, but like a lot worse, or no, not worse. They're about the same as what he experienced in hell. And so He comes back from hell. His brother, Sam, pulls him back. Sam and Dean. I hope I'm not mixing up these names. Anyway, pulls him back from hell, and he doesn't remember anything. And so that's called dissociation, divided consciousness. And so when that happens at a young age, and our kids are getting traumatized from a very young age, then we start to develop stress, and it starts to build up. It becomes a habit. And I've got a fantastic quote from here that I'm putting into my big package that explains it in a nutshell. And that's what's leading to 100 million Americans being obese. 150 Americans have hypertension right now. And 2 million illnesses which are reversible and avoidable and preventable with healthy living. And the cure is to start a show in a couple days where we talk about and interview these professors. They have not gotten a platform for 20 or 30 years. Nobody knows about them. Everybody I know has this problem because I try to talk to them just like you were, Chip, and they're not living their dreams. They're out of touch with their inner feelings and needs. They're overloading with toxic stress and having a lot of negative emotions as a result. It's complicated. I'm sure you're witnessing it too. And so, if I could wrap it up by finishing with this book, Passing the Baton of Freedom to Others. I know you know the words of John F. Kennedy when he said, "My fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." So I'm saying, Chuck, what we can do is create a TV show so that the world can hear these ideas. And that's what's never been done. So, but do you recall, or did you know, that he completed his thoughts with these words? "My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man." Page 186, Black Belt Patriotism. So I went to school with Chuck's kids, 2 of his sons, grade school. I don't know how their grades were. I was getting D's and F's. And at home, my dad was having a major problem with toxic stress overload, anger, and violence towards my mom and my brother. So I was going into school and I was getting D's and F's, and nobody said, "Chris, D's and F's is a sign of toxic stress overload. There must be something happening in your life that's causing it. And so let's bring your parents in and talk to them." No, they just got a message back saying, "Chris is spacing out in class. What's going on?" They didn't know what's going on. They didn't know what that meant. Just like the shooter who was living in a broken family, in conflict at home, getting bullied at school, had nowhere to turn. Way before that, I took the solution to all those senators. So I'm going to take it again. I'm going to take this video and my proposals about the 16 medications right down to the Capitol, and I'm going to deliver it, and I'm going to catch it on video to these 5 people. I'm going to give them the 2-page letter. Millions of seniors are getting poisoned right now. My dad is one of them, got poisoned with 1 drug. Millions are getting 16 drugs in violation of the Hippocratic Oath and their constitutional rights to not be poisoned, obviously. And are you going to help me? And I'm going to give it to the staff people, and I'm going to make a positive but visible scene in front of the Capitol. I'm going to set up a big screen TV. I'm going to have a battery that lasts for a few hours. I'm going to play that video, and I'm going to do what I need to do to try to save my dad within the next couple weeks. I'm inviting you to take a stand with me and be a hero to the whole planet. And so that's what Chuck is challenging us to do. So when I was going to school with Eric and Mike, your sons, Chuck, there was an incident, my brother remembers it, where he had to pull Eric off of me. Had Eric been trained by you in martial arts, okay, I'm sure that wasn't an issue, okay? But it's funny to me now because probably I smarted off to him, because we all grew up watching crap on TV of cartoon characters beating the hell out of each other, making jokes at others' expenses, making people feel like crap. And that's what we grew up on watching. Just watch Bugs Bunny, the Roadrunner, Daffy Duck, the Three Stooges, all those people. Okay? Worthless. Program your kids to not get along and fight and bully each other. And it's still going on today. The bullies that bullied this shooter were watching the crap that's on TV today, and that's where they learned how to be mean-ass, abusive, condescending kids. And they may be getting that experience at home from a family member, which is a common thing in families. And so let's now create a project which gets all those kids help, just like I needed when I was in grade school in Palos Verdes, California, Rolling Hills Estates, with Chuck Norris's kids. So he must have lived right down the block from us. Okay, I went there from kindergarten to 5th grade. At home, it was chaos. There was no free mental health care. There was no trauma-informed care. My mom went to multiple psychologists. One of them dropped his pants on her. The other was incompetent. The next one said, "There's nothing I can do," etc., etc., etc. Still, we're not getting help. So then, a year later, I went to school with Bruce Lee's son. I'm sure, Chuck, you knew Bruce really well. I've got the yearbook, and I showed it in one of the other videos. Okay, I'm not going to dig it up because we're trying to get under 2 hours here. So, Bruce had died a couple years earlier because he got a bad drug from drug companies that are pushing it out onto the market and flooding the market so that millions of people take bad drugs and go crazy. Maybe some of them think it's a good idea, but that drug was to treat stress. It was called Miltown. It was an antidepressant, a stress reducer, an anxiety treatment. And so Bruce was having stress. Okay, well, tie it all together with my other videos. Bruce grew up during genocide. When he was 3 months old, his parents moved to Hong Kong, and then Hitler attacked in Hawaii, and he attacked in Hong Kong, and he took over Hong Kong. Oh, no, the Japanese. It wasn't Hitler. It was the Japanese. So they took over Hong Kong. They killed 100,000 people. They committed genocide. They burned and razed. And Bruce Lee, that's where he grew up. So a very young age, toxic stress overload. 30 years later or so, still has a lot of stress. These are symptoms of he didn't get over it. It got stuffed. Okay? These bad drugs that are still flooding the market got to him. He took it. He had a bad reaction and his brain swelled and he died. It's in the Wikipedia entry. Okay? 2 years later, I'm at school with Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee's son. My brother became friends with him a little bit. He wasn't allowed to have friends because of what had happened to his dad. Why am I bringing that up? Well, connects the dots. Okay, a few years later, ended up at the same school as Eric and Mike Norris. Let's see. No, that was Merrill Est. I think Eric and Mike were at Rolling Hills, and I'm not going to look it up because that was 2 years later. Anyway, I ended up in 9th grade. The last incident of violence in my family that my dad did. Okay, it was always like losing his temper. Okay, he was a good dad most of the time, so that's why I didn't become a shooter. Okay, so he was good, fantastic most of the time. Okay, he just had these. He was working himself to death in the medical system because the medical system is so ignorant of stress and healthy living that they work themselves into illness. So my dad became violent and had a violent temper and chronically angry. Only violent maybe 10 times in the entire marriage when I was growing up, before the divorce. So I don't want to overblow it. And not extremely, it was just boom, Anyway, it's getting really hot in here because I have to keep the dang air conditioning off. And so I'm in a non-professional thing, okay? I'm in a non-professional studio. I'm trying to team up with professionals like Chip and Joanna Gaines. Okay, so now meandering. So this ties it into Chuck before I go on for the last couple minutes with his book and what it says here. And so the last incident was my dad hitting my brother in the mouth because my brother smarted off to him. And my dad and my mom were trying to help him. But I was in the 9th grade. And that I wasn't there, but it ended up traumatizing the whole family and me. My stress went through the roof. So 9th grade through 12th grade, I was hiding in the library. Everybody went to lunch. I was terrified, full of anxiety. I had a couple kind of good friends that I barely knew and barely spent time with. Okay, so just like this shooter who was alienated from everybody, he was getting bullied. I got bullied a little bit at Merrill Est. After 2 years, I had to leave because it was just unpleasant. I was getting bullied. I got bullied a little bit. It kind of got fixed, but it kind of like created a bad sensation. So I went over to Rolling Hills High School. I think that's where Eric and Mike graduated from. I'm pretty sure. I got the yearbook right around here. Okay, I talked about it in one of the other videos on my website. You can see it. Anyway, throughout high school, I was getting D's and F's, just like the shooter. Nobody came to me and said, Chris, difficulty concentrating with memory is a symptom of stress. I managed to graduate, ended up at Lewis and Clark College in Oregon, had to drop out after a year because I was getting D's and F's. Still hadn't dealt with down below my true feelings. Chip, are you putting it all together? I needed this book. I needed a program where you look inward and do the same kind of analysis that you have done in your books. And I'm running out of time. So, had to drop out of school for a year. A few years later, ended up at UCLA. My dad's book got published in 1984. I didn't read it. I didn't know how important it was. I didn't even know how to read. That's why I was getting D's and F's. Difficulty concentrating with memory. I had amnesia from my childhood, which was not as bad as half of America, but it was difficult. It had a lot of good aspects. That's why I didn't end up like this guy. Okay, I got really nice parents most of the time. My mom is an angel. Okay, a perfect angel. Okay, but Chuck says, pull it all together. Went through high school, barely made it out, ended up at UCLA. After a year, got kicked out for getting D's and F's. Nobody came to me and said, Chris, what's going on with you? Because my dad's book, which came out 5 years earlier, when he was a professor of medicine at UCLA, didn't get widely distributed to all the doctors. And so that's a big problem. Just like Dean Ornish's books, which are about curing heart disease and like 1 million deaths, or 1.5 million if you include cancer, are not getting distributed throughout the medical system because there's no requirement to. Doctors can do whatever they want. The most recent report from the legislators in Texas, again, they all got the Forgotten Children report in 2004. All those legislators got that report. Kids are getting over-medicated. They're not getting what they need. They need the Kickstart Kids program. Oh no, that didn't exist yet. Okay, no. Actually, I was trying to bring it together in 2006 in a TV show. I was trying to get Chuck's program in a primetime TV show. That's what I was talking to Tracy Reiner about. Okay, pull it all together. So, Forgotten Children report. Over-medicated. Not getting what they need. Instead of getting over-medicated, they all need hugs. They need people to say, what's going on with you kids? We're going to get you in a great place. The families that are losing their kids are broken and they're not getting help, just like my family didn't when I was growing up. And so 1/3 of kids don't graduate from high school because in Texas and all over the country, because they're not getting services. So pull it all together. Okay, I'm going to read this. I got 2 minutes left. Even our own Liberty Bell is inscribed with these words: proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. But if we don't ring that bell, who will? The government? I believe we who possess freedom have a responsibility to give and assure the same gift to others, especially those who are oppressed. So millions of kids like this shooter are getting oppressed and bullied in our schools. And who's going to show up, Chuck? Who's going to show up, Jared? Who's going to show up, Chip and Joanna? We are. Okay? I'm inviting you to do it. We're going to come together as a team. We must not allow an age of intolerance and political corruption to prevent us from sharing the truth and remaining in the fight. It might be safer, more politically correct, and cost us a whole lot less to keep to ourselves. But political and religious abstinence and seclusion doesn't exactly demonstrate a true love for our neighbors. We must not go missing in action. Exclamation point. So, love our neighbors. In this video, Matt said that one of the victims was going to read a passage from the Bible in church the next Sunday before she got shot. And that quote said, "Love God with all your heart and all your soul." When I heard that, I thought, well, he didn't read the whole quote. No, it was from the Old Testament. But what Jesus came to say in the New Testament is God has 2 commandments for us. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. So, we're all comfortable, okay? And we know the cure, and there's millions of people who need it. And so, if we love our neighbor as ourselves, Chuck, your wife got poisoned with a bad drug, just like my dad, and you did everything to turn it around. You know about polypharmacy. Your article on polypharmacy is in my package. About the dangers of polypharmacy. You wrote a whole article. You're against that. You've spoken out. We got to come together to make it stop. And we can do it. Like that. So, all it takes is the will. I'm finally coming together with people in person. In person. That's not stoppable. For 20 years I've been going through phone calls and the emails. That's stoppable. Okay, people coming together in person, what are they going to do? Are the commandos going to come falling down if we're all getting together in black suits? Well, I'm going to have cameras for them. We're going to get it and broadcast it live on Vimeo and YouTube. Okay? So let's create that meeting in a couple days. And let me read a little more. Because what you wrote in here, how many years ago, is the most important thing on the planet. 2008. That's when I was testifying to the Texas State Senate. Okay? You can find the video. 2008. Oh my God. Wait a second here. 2008. This is about the 2 million deaths. Wait a second. Okay. This is tripping me out. We must not go missing in action. We are missing in action, okay? We're missing in action. We must go unmissing in action. The only question that remains is, will we bear the baton of liberty and pass it to another? Will we remind others of the grand old story about Old Glory, or will we forget our history and who we are as a nation? Passing the baton is this book. So that's what I'm saying. 20 years ago, I started accumulating this massive library, and I said, what the hell? The cure's right in here. My whole family has this, and they are getting problems. So I created the video, the 11 hours. It's been posted for over 10 years. Will we wallow in affluence and lose our memory of freedom? I say, will we unchain the binds that are holding us back and keeping us silent? Will we at least examine them in our private thoughts or with our friends and family members who will listen to us? I plead with you to pass on the baton of freedom, to do what you can in your family and neighborhood to expand an appreciation of what America is and should be. What it should be is eliminate the culture of fear. That's what Chip and Joanna are saying. They want to eliminate the culture of fear, they wrote. The way to do that is with programming 1 hour. I'm not going to go into it again. Okay. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves, and under a just God cannot long retain it." And Daniel Webster concluded, God grants liberty only to those who love it and are always ready to guard and defend it. Well, the simplest one is the freedom to speak and assemble in a small group with a camera and taking that message global. Is anybody afraid of that amongst you? I'm not afraid one little bit anymore. We can no longer passively sit back and just criticize government officials. We must fight for our Bill of Rights, or we will most assuredly lose them to a system of bureaucratic control, like we have. A bureaucracy which sets it up like the Titanic, and then you watch your friends die, and you struggle to save them, and they sit idly by and do nothing except impede the solutions. I'll continue on page 187 and 88. As Charles Pegui once said, quote, tyranny is always better organized than freedom. Boy, is that the truth, Chuck writes. The question still stands. Are we willing to sacrifice to assure not only our freedom, but the freedom of future generations? Question mark. Patrick Henry asked a similar question. Quote, is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! Exclamation. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. So, I'm inviting a small group of people to come together and create the liberty to be heard so that the bad problems go away, like millions of seniors getting poisoned, and the good problems, the good solutions, get a focus and get funded. We must never forget that freedom, even ours, was bought at a price. It is sacrifice that sustains the continuance of freedom. This is why John Quincy Adams' challenge still beckons us from across the years. Quote, you will never know how much it has cost my generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it. I would like to make use of the freedom for the cure for our many illnesses to be heard by the whole country and funded in the next week. And I invite this small group to join me. And what is good use? Chuck asks. Keeping it only to ourselves or assuring its preservation for future generations? I believe, along with so many others, that our abundance of liberties should overflow to help others, not be hoarded to ourselves. Even Jesus said, to whom much is given, much is required. Are those words not also true for those who have given greater degrees of freedom? And so, some of you guys haven't had the chance to do that. And I'm saying this is it. Thomas Paine could be speaking to us today when he said to the revolutionists in 1776, these are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Well, I got news for you. It's not going to be hard with the right team and the right plan. And global events are all lining up for it to happen in a very short period of time, like a week or two. A radical change can come if the people I'm contacting all come together in the next week with a plan to do or die. Was that a bad ending? Okay, do or live. Okay. Let me tell you why nobody's going to die. Okay, it's the end of 2 million people dying, first of all, every year. So if somebody dies, 1,000 people come together and say, what the hell happened? And then this whole thing goes global. Okay? So don't be paranoid. We must not allow the efforts of patriots past to come to naught. We must continue where they left off. We must finish their work. As Abraham Lincoln said at Gettysburg in 1863, it is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus so far nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task of remaining, the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That's what he said. Okay? So, are we going to huddle in fear? Afraid to take these ideas global? Afraid to point out what's in opposition of them? And what's refusing to fund those solutions? Or are we going to come together and make it happen? Chuck writes, I'm not willing to allow those who have sacrificed for America's freedom to die in vain. That is why I've committed the rest of my life to assure that the America of yesteryear became the America of tomorrow. My wish is that you will now join me and encourage others to do the same. Okay, that was in 2008. We need an organization, starting with a TV show, starting with not getting Jeff Zucker's thumbs up, or Bill Gates or whatever, just by getting together for an hour, maybe in person, maybe on Zoom, filming it. What I'm seeing is like 4 squares, Zoom call, 4 people. Who's going to be the first 4, the first 3 to join me in that conversation? Maybe 1, and maybe it'll be 2 of us to start. Okay? Here we stand, we can do no other. That's what I'm saying. 2008, he wrote that. So, unfinished work of Gettysburg. Freedom for the black people. Now they're in jails. And then their kids are getting hauled off to foster care, where they get too many drugs. And they're in jail because our leaders are not providing free mental health care across the country. So people go to jail instead of getting help with their addiction problem. It's all tied together. Those 19 leaders have been creating this entire reality. We're a bunch of hamsters in a cage, and they are buying or not buying the little wheels, putting crap in our water, giving us food that makes us fat and lazy and tired and weak and dispirited, stressing us all, shaking the cages, lighting fires, creating riots, causing conflict, shipping the jobs overseas so that we don't have any place to work in the inner cities, blaming the police for our problems to create animosity on a local level. And when the riots start, they're taking it as an opportunity to get more people to join their team. Okay? Add it up, guys. We have been fooled. And we can change that fact in a short amount of time by pulling our heads together. And I've been catching this Texas accent, and I better just stop talking right now because this is my last statement. I think I've covered it all. There's a lot more to say that's in this book right here, okay, that I didn't even get to. Chip's book, which Joanna, I'm sure you discussed everything that went into here. Probably half came out of your mouth. Okay? I'm going to leave with this thought. Being connected nourishes us. We are a social species made to be with one another, to work together to join our lives. And yet I read about a study that showed that more than half of Americans would describe themselves as lonely. Let that sink in for a moment. Even if you set aside how sad that is, you can look at how loneliness affects our health and see how important it is for us to connect. Oh, but our leaders said, don't connect, you're in danger. Shut down the churches. Okay? And everybody should take this shot because it'll make you feel better and it'll help you survive a lot longer in this dangerous time. Okay? Those are the same 19 people who were in the room for the video with Obama and Biden where they said millions of seniors are taking 16 medications. It's making them sick, bankrupting the country, poisoning them, and killing them. Okay? So, I swear I'm going to wrap this up. But it's another example. Loneliness. The reason why they're lonely is because people are disconnected. Okay? Tie it together. People who are disconnected get together. They're not connected with their inner feelings, as you talk about in your book, Chip. And then they get together, and then they don't know how to connect on an emotional soul level because there's a split between their mind, their body, and their soul. And let me be honest with you. I'm going to only get 10 views on this fucking video because, you know what? There ain't nobody on the planet who can hear this shit. But if you can, we need to come together, create a team of those who know and those who understand. They are in the minority. But if they come together, they can take the vision global. So I believe John Paul Dejoria is one of those people. Watch his TED Talk 10 times. He knows that it's possible for there to be a global healing, a global shift. And I'm going to take my project right to his ranch. And to his son, as I said, has another ranch. The address is available. And it's got a healing program for people that have this affliction we're talking about. So, if you have been intellectually capable of absorbing all this information, you are smart enough to put it all together. Chip, you might be the only one on planet Earth, you and your wife, who watch my video. That's all it's going to take to tape it global. Okay? That's all it's going to take. Me and you and her. Your awesome, beautiful, talented, super genius wife. She's half the reason you got healed, I guarantee you. She had that knowledge, and I don't know where she got it from, but I'm going to ask her about how to heal. And I can see it in your story, in your 3 books, with one of them with her. Again, my friend Sherry Reed, I sent you her story, I believe. knows John Paul Dejoria as a friend for 30 years, close friend. Dr. Dean Ornish, she had a vision. She died and God gave her a vision, an experience of the entire planet healing, which is what you want to do. Let me connect the dots again. If you have an idea about how to heal the world, send it to me. So I did. Actually, I sent your book. I sent the book to Chip and Joanna Gaines, Chuck Norris, Matthew McConaughey. Sent it to the ranch. Okay? So, you said how to heal the world. I'm going to take that. I got to meet with you. I got to hear from you. I'm not going to stop until I get a message, a verbal video that says, Chris, I watched your video. I heard your stuff. I read the 2-page letter about the 16 medications, and I want to help or I don't want to help. Okay? I got a week to get to you, dude. Okay? I got a week. My dad's in bad shape. He can't last much longer. We can pull it together. We can save him. My dad needs the cure that's in your book. If he had gotten your book 20 years ago, he went to the doctor. The doctor said, you have atrial fibrillation, a heart problem. Put him on a drug. He got worse. Over a few months, this is all 20 years ago when I was going to the UCLA Medical Library. I said, Dad, I'm worried about you. I found a UCLA Medical Library. I got a big stack. It said it was caused by stress. He got worked into illness because he was working taking care of patients at 7 nursing homes. Patients that were getting over-medicated to death. Dying. Hysterical family members coming in. My dad taking off all these drugs that were killing him, but it's too late, okay? The bad shit. He didn't have a health. He couldn't put them. All those seniors coming in for 10 years, he couldn't put them into a Pritikin program, a healthy living facility. Didn't get paid for. Pritikin testified 30 years ago. His son did. To Henry Waxman. Tie it all together. And I'm meandering again. So let me finish. We're going to save my dad. Then we're going to save your family members. We're going to reverse their illnesses. And we're going to save a couple million people. So the same thing I'm trying to get from my dad is what's going to save those 2 million people that are dying every year. That's how much every day? How much every day? 2 million times 365. It's like 10 airplanes every day. Phenomenal. Dean Ornish testified to the Senate, along with Andrew Weil, Mark Hyman, all of them, 10 years ago. It's all in my letter. Okay, they said all this is reversible. No, 12 years ago. 13 years ago, 2009. Okay, it's all in my letter. Thank you very much for watching. This is it. Let's do it. Let's live our dreams.